Ravi Zacharias and Muhammad were very different in many ways. Muhammad bought, owned, sold, and traded black African slaves. Ravi didn't. Muhammad married a prepubescent girl. Ravi didn't. Muhammad ordered his followers to execute people for making fun of him. Ravi didn't. Muhammad married the wife of his own adopted son. Ravi didn't. Ravi could read. So there are lots of differences, but there are some interesting similarities, and I wanted to draw attention to two similarities between Muhammad and Ravi Zacharias. First, Muhammad and Ravi Zacharias both tried to commit suicide, Muhammad far more frequently than Ravi. By the time he was 17 years old, growing up in India, Ravi was an atheist. He sank into a depression and tried to kill himself. He was taken to the hospital in critical condition. A man named Fred David brought Ravi a Bible, but Ravi was too weak to reach out his hand and accept it. Fred David and Ravi's mother had to read to him. As they were reading John 14, Jesus' words in verse 19 caught Ravi's attention. Jesus said, "Because I live, you also will live." Ravi went on to become one of the world's most powerful and respected defenders of Christianity. Muhammad also tried to kill himself over and over and over again. According to Muslim sources, when Muhammad encountered the entity that he would eventually call the angel Gabriel, he was so terrified that he thought about committing suicide. This was before he started receiving Quran revelations. After he started receiving verses of the Quran, Muhammad concluded that he was demon-possessed, and he was so worried that his tribe would make fun of him for being possessed by a demon that he decided to commit suicide by hurling himself off a cliff. Halfway up the mountain, the entity that would eventually be called the angel Gabriel stopped him from killing himself. When Muhammad's wife Khadijah saw that her husband was suicidal, she and her cousin Waraka talked to him and convinced him that he wasn't possessed. He was a prophet of the great God Allah. But Waraka soon died, and Muhammad's revelations suddenly stopped. Guess who decided to kill himself? Let's find out in Sahih al-Bukhari, number 6982. But after a few days, Waraka died, and the divine revelation was also paused for a while, and the prophet became so sad, as we have heard, that he intended several times, notice we're talking about multiple occasions, to throw himself from the tops of high mountains, plural, multiple mountains, and every time he went up to the top of a mountain in order to throw himself down, notice that he actually set out to kill himself numerous times. Jibril, supposedly the angel Gabriel, would appear before him and say, "O Muhammad, you are indeed Allah's messenger in truth," whereupon his heart would become quiet and he would calm down and would return home. So Gabriel had to regularly calm Muhammad down to keep him from plunging to his death. And whenever the period of the coming of the revelation used to become long, he would do as before. He'd head for a cliff. But when he used to reach the top of a mountain, Jibril would appear before him and say to him what he had said before. Notice that this happened over and over again. Whenever Gabriel didn't show up with a new revelation, Muhammad would climb a mountain in order to kill himself. According to Muslim sources, when Muhammad was scared, he wanted to kill himself. When he was worried about being embarrassed, he wanted to kill himself. When he felt neglected, he wanted to kill himself. But he never succeeded in killing himself. Some sort of entity would always intervene because Muhammad was simply too important for this entity's plans. Now, if you're a Christian or a Jew and you read about Muhammad's interactions with this entity, this thing was clearly demonic. Muhammad's interactions with the being that he eventually started calling the angel Gabriel sound like something out of a horror film. But more on that when I record, was Muhammad demon-possessed? For now, I'll just point out, for you Muslims who are upset with me for saying that Muhammad encountered something demonic, keep in mind that Muhammad himself thought that it was demonic. That was his first impression. That's one of the reasons he tried to kill himself. He thought he was possessed. It was his wife Khadijah, who wasn't there, who convinced her husband that he wasn't possessed, he was a prophet. Even the pagans realized that Muhammad was talking to a demon. Sahih al-Bukhari, 1125. Narrated Jundub bin Abdullah, Gabriel, did not come to the Prophet for some time, and so one of the Quraysh women said, "His Satan has deserted him." So came the divine revelation, "By the forenoon after sunrise, by the night when it darkens and stands still, your Lord, O Muhammad, has neither forsaken you nor hates you." Quran 93 verses 1 through 3. So the woman was wrong. Muhammad's Satan hadn't deserted him. His Satan was just getting started. But Muhammad, like Ravi Zacharias, did survive his suicide attempts. The second similarity between Muhammad and Ravi Zacharias was that they both consumed poison. As a teenager, Ravi tried to kill himself by drinking poison. He made a full recovery. Muhammad didn't try to kill himself by drinking poison. As we've seen, his preferred method of killing himself was jumping off a cliff. But Muhammad was poisoned by someone else, a Jewish woman named Zainab bint al-Harith, whose father, uncle, and husband had all been killed by Muslims. Now, there are more than 7 billion people in the world. You can line up all 7 billion plus people and ask them, if you just killed a woman's father, husband, and uncle, and she offers to cook your favorite dinner, should you accept her offer? 100% of people, 7 billion plus out of 7 billion plus, will answer, no, you do not, under any circumstances, accept a meal from a woman whose entire family you just slaughtered. In fact, in all of history, there's only been one person ever who thinks that it's a good idea to accept a home-cooked meal from a woman whose family he just slaughtered. All other people who have ever lived in the entire history of humanity, upon being offered a plate of lamb by a woman whose family they had just killed, would answer, nah, I'm good. But there's one man, only one, who's dumb enough to take a plate of food from a woman whose father, husband, and uncle had just been slaughtered by his followers. That man couldn't kill himself by jumping off a cliff, but he sure could kill himself by jumping on a plate of roasted lamb. Here's what happened. Sunan Abu Dawud, 4512. A Jewish woman in Khaybar gave him a roasted sheep that she had poisoned, and the messenger of Allah ate from it, as did the people. He said, "Lift up your hands," meaning stop eating, "for it has told me that it is poisoned." Bishr bin al-Bara bin Marur al-Ansari died of that poison, and he sent word to the Jewish woman asking, "What made you do what you did?" She said, "If you were a prophet, it would not harm you, and if you were a king, the people would have been rid of you." The messenger of Allah ordered that she be killed. Then he said during his final illness, "I continued to feel pain because of the morsel that I ate at Khaybar, but now it has cut off my aorta." Muhammad died in complete agony due to the poison slowly destroying his internal organs, all because he was too stupid to turn down a plate of roasted lamb. I can't imagine a more humiliating death. I can't imagine a dumber prophet. But like Ravi Zacharias, Muhammad swallowed some poison. So there are some similarities between Ravi Zacharias and Muhammad, but they're superficial. A closer look at the parallels shows how different these men were. Ravi survived after being transformed by Jesus' words, "Because I live, you also will live." Muhammad died after being poisoned by a woman who said, "Because my father and husband died, you die." You reap what you sow. Ravi Zacharias sowed a lifetime of ministry, and he reaped an apologetics legacy that will never end. Muhammad sowed violence, and he reaped the death not only of himself, but also of nearly everyone around him. Fortunately, however, Muhammad's legacy of death will come to an end.